Hey, it's Bob from Home Cook Basics. So I got a beef stew cooking on the stove, and I wanted to do another video on my top 7 beginner cooking mistakes. Now, learning to cook doesn't have to be too hard, and it can be difficult. You're trying to figure out everything you want to do. It doesn't seem to be working out correctly. So I got a few tips, things that I thought about that most beginners are having a hard time with. And if you could change these things and you could tweak these things, it's really going to step up your cooking game. Now, the first one I want to talk about is salt. So salt is just so important. It's not just the seasoning of your dish, but it's salt. Salt enhances the flavor. So I salt pretty much all my ingredients as I cook. So I salt my chicken or beef before I cook them. And then it's more of like, if you can get into the practice of salting your dish as you cook, it's just gonna be way better. And you have to think about too, like, so you wanna season all your food. It's just like, this is like the #1 thing. If you watch like chefs on TV or on YouTube, you just be amazed at how much they're salting. It's just constantly seasoning. Now, when it comes to salt too, salt's not all equal, so you really want to look at, I like to use a kosher salt. So this one is, it's not the diamond, it's the other one. I'm not sure the exact brand, but the flakes in there, it's a kosher salt, but they're a little bit flatter. I found this one to be the best because it melts better. If you're really wondering what salt I use, just let me know in the comments and I'll respond to which kosher salt that I came to love. But it's not the diamond one. That diamond one was too thick. Definitely do not use ionized salt, that table salt that's super fine. That's not a salt that you want to cook with. It might have a good reason to use it for maybe lightly salting your food at the table, but I don't even have that in my pantry anymore. I don't cook with it. I don't use it. I use a really good kosher salt. All right, my second tip, the biggest thing I see beginner cooks making is the pan heat. When you're cooking, people tend to not get the pan hot enough before you start cooking. Like, this is really important. When you saute something or you're cooking something, say in a frying pan, the goal is to get that pan temperature up to a good temperature that the oil that you add is not smoking, but it's hot enough that it's moving and beating around that pan. And what this is going to do is when you add your meat or your vegetable, it's going to brown it. Now, when you brown it, you're adding flavor. The browning effect is what they call the Maillard reaction. And that Maillard reaction brings flavor to whatever recipe or food that you're cooking. So it's really important to get a hot pan. Now, I like to focus a little more on getting the pan somewhat decent, warming it up, then adding my oil and checking the oil to see how hot my pan is. There's 2 reasons I do this. For one, if you leave a pan too long on a burner with nothing in it, you could burn up the pan. If you have a cheap pan, something that's not that expensive or has a high quality metal, it'll burn a lot faster. So that's something you really want to focus on. Once you're in the game and you're going to start heating your dish, heating your food to start cooking, make sure your pan you're right there with it. Get it warm, put it on a medium heat, depending on what you're cooking. Get a little bit warm where you can hover your hand about a ½ inch away and feel that heat. And then you're gonna add your oil. When you add your oil, you're looking for a shimmer in that oil. If it moves around really slow in the pan, you're obviously not hot enough. And once it starts really moving, and you start getting beads in it, when you're looking for a shimmer in that oil and heat, it's gonna move really fast, and that's a good sign that it's ready to cook. Now, there's a couple reasons for this too, is if you put your meat or something in a colder pan with an oil, it's just gonna absorb that oil. It's not gonna brown it. It's gonna make your food taste kind of icky. It's just, you really wanna focus on having a hot pan. Now, I know a lot of beginner cooks are afraid of this hot pan. They're like, it's too hot, I don't know what to do, everything's moving so fast. Just remember, whenever you're cooking, to have a safe zone on your stove. So you can pull your food away, pull it to another safe spot if it's too hot, grab your pan if it's too hot, hold it up, get it off that heat, and let it do its thing and then put it back. Now, a caveat to this is if you're using high heat but bad oils like a cheap vegetable oil or canola oil or something like that, then it could get too hot and it smokes too hot. I mean, it smokes too quickly. So then I like to focus on getting a good oil. I use an extra virgin olive oil that has a high, they tend to have, if you get extra virgin and a good quality, it'll have a higher smoke point. That'll let you get your pan hot enough that whatever you're putting in is gonna brown. And you'll see that throughout my videos. So I usually predominantly use extra virgin olive oil. So my number 3 beginner mistake that a lot of people don't think about is adding an acid and also the fat in your dish. So there's a great book out there, I'll let you know in the show notes, but it's called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. This book is a game changer. I highly recommend that you read it. You start to incorporate these into your food, and you'll see in my cooking that's something I really focus on. So when I say a lot of people don't remember to do this, they're not adding enough acid to the dish, or they're not balancing it with the salt, the acid, the fat, and the heat. So the heat was what we talked about earlier with the pan and browning your meat. We talked about the salt, and then this fat and acid. So the fat can come in all kinds of directions. It could be some fat from the heat. If you're cooking, say, chicken thighs, that chicken fat is gonna add some flavor to the dish. This beef stew that I'm making today had some fat in it with that chuck roast, so that can add it. Oil can add you that fat. Cream, butter can add that fat. That fat is really important to add to your dish. To help balance that, we're talking about acids. So with an acid, I'll give you an example. If you see a lot of my braising and some of my cooking, I put tomato paste. That tomato paste, tomatoes are acidic, and that adds that acid to the dish. Or a vinegar is a great way, or a rice wine, or actually wine. So cooking with wine will add that acid. And a nice clean acid that I really enjoy is citrus. So lemons and limes and oranges. The lemon and lime will probably add a little bit more acid, but it helps complement the fat and help balance it out. All right, number 4 big mistake is not checking your temperature. You really want to check the temperature of your food. So if you're one of those persons that's cooking chicken all the time and it's like, it's overcooked, or it's undercooked, and then you try to recook it to get it hotter, you really want to focus on checking the temperature. These things are great. I think it's like 20 or 30 bucks. There's a thermo pin one that's a little bit nicer. I don't have that. I use these thermo pops and they work really well. But the idea is to check your meat and pull it off the heat like within 5 degrees of whatever you're shooting for. That's probably the biggest reason that people overcook chicken, is because they're not checking that actual temperature. And if you get yourself a thermometer and start checking your meat, it's really gonna change your game and give you juicy chicken rather than dried out chicken or whatever meat that you're trying to cook. All right, so number 5. So my number 5 beginner mistake is not prepping your ingredients. When you start to learn to cook, you see these cooking shows and everybody's like, they're chopping this up and they're throwing stuff around and adding stuff, and everything's like, just practice. Maybe they know the recipe really well, and then you'll be able to do that. But in the beginning, really focus on prepping all your ingredients. Now you got everything ready, so when you get up there and you step up to the plate to start sauteing your food and cooking your food, you got everything there waiting and ready. That way you're not trying to get something and something's burning and you're not able to really focus on what you're cooking. Because when you start cooking, that's the focus, right? Because we want to brown our meats, we don't want to overcook them, we don't undercook them. You want to focus on the task in hand. And if you have all your ingredients prepped, I'm telling you, it's a game changer. So start practicing that. You see that in my videos. If there's something else you struggle with these last ones, let me know in the comments. I'd love to add it to another video. Number 6, so we're getting really close to number 7. And number 6, I say, is tasting your food. It's really important as you start building your dish and as you start adding flavor, go ahead and start tasting it. And as you start tasting, you're gonna start to understand how things balance, like what the fat tastes like, the butter, and the acid that you're adding, the lemon or lime. And start incorporating that in your food. You start tasting that, it's really gonna give you a better taste of what you could add, say if you didn't have an ingredient, or when you start cooking on your own without recipes, it's really going to help you change the game in your cooking. So it's really important to check and taste your food. And one this really applies to is that salt. So I don't salt a lot of my dishes till the very end, that for the final seasoning. I'll season meat before I start cooking, or I'll season vegetables with salt to extract moisture, like if you want to get that moisture out so you can start browning that vegetable. That's really important. But the overall flavoring of the dish, I do tend to be at the end, especially for soups, stews, stuff like that. And you're really looking to check the salt. And when the flavor is not there and you're missing something, I'm telling you, it's gonna be the salt. So taste your food, so important. Taste it as you go, get a group of spoons, get your family involved, have them taste the food, and start building your flavor, and it really will help with your home cooking. And number 7, a really important one so you don't get sick, is the cross-contamination of food. So this is really important. I tend to cook when I'm prepping my beef or my chicken, especially chicken. I'm thinking about cross-contaminating that chicken with whatever else I'm cooking. So a lot of times I will prep my chicken, because I cut up my whole bird. I got a great video on it if you want to check that out. I prep my whole chicken, get it ready, get it on a plate, and what I'm going to use so it's ready to go so I can add it to whatever dish and then wash my hands. And then I tend to keep all those dishes that I had with the raw chicken, they kind of get washed by themselves, separate from the other stuff, so I don't cross-contaminate. So let me know in the comments which one of these is that you find that you struggle with the most. Let me know. And if you have any ideas or thoughts on any of these or something that would really help a home cook, let me know in the comments. And hey, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I got all kinds of great videos. Make sure you check out this beef stew recipe that I've been talking about in this video. You're really gonna love it. It's delicious. And this how to cut a whole chicken that I talked about, watch that video. And hey, I'll see you next time on Home Cook Basics.